Well, I wanted to just talk about some of the subjects, those leave no trace type of subjects that we're going over in this class, and some of them you need to have a little background with them, and so I thought I'd put together a little bit talk, or what I'd more likely call a visit with each one of these. Again, so that it's not just a linear type of learning experience. Maybe you can take a few of the things that we can use from our experiences and take them to the backcountry. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for you, you're going to have to kind of experience some of this stuff yourself. Our subject this particular lesson is about respecting wildlife, and that's one of the reasons most of us actually get out into the backcountry is at least one of the major ones is that we can experience them at a different level than we do just passing them in a car or alongside the road or in any other kind of pseudo type of setup where we can take a look at the animals out there. I mean, there's just something to be said for the actual wildness and how we see them and their interactions with us, with the country out there and things like that. And I come at it as a hunter, so that's kind of my baseline is that. It doesn't mean that I'm always on the hunt, but it always as if I'm studying them as if I were hunting them. And sometimes, I might think that I have a little bit different appreciation for the animals during certain times of the year, and I mean that in all humbleness. So when you're out there, respecting the wildlife simply means, if we were just to put it into one sentence, is that just kind of take it all in and, try to, I would say, try not to disturb them too much. That doesn't mean that they're not going to move away from you. It doesn't mean they're not going to run away from you at times, because that's just how, they have adapted themselves. As ungulants, for the most part, are the big game we talk more about than anything. Those animals have been pursued for thousands of years, so they do know what a man on two legs is all about. Usually, up until the last 100 years or 150 years, most of the time we were chasing them so that we could have a food source. And so anyway, that's kind of the perspective I have on the whole thing, and I'm certainly would love to visit with each and every one of you if we could, and see where you're coming from and that sort of thing. If we look at some of the things as far as the leave no trace methodology and principles, try to do most of that from a distance. As a hunter, I do try to get a little bit closer so that I can see some of the intricacies of the behavior and things like that, and I don't think that's a bad thing. In order to, and if you're a photographer, you're obviously doing those same kinds of things as well. So just approach with caution. It talks a little bit in this paper we put together for you about feeding animals, wild animals, of course. And the major part of it is that they do need to learn how to survive and be out there on their own, because you can't be out there every day. So that's one of the reasons we in an LNT type of a procedure wouldn't want to bait them or bring them in this regard, just for viewing cases and things like that. It does make them very susceptible to other predators and that sort of thing as well. So their well-being is of utmost importance when we're talking about this sort of thing too. We are going to have a lesson on grizzly bears, so I don't want to give it all up to you, but that's been a huge part of our experience in the backcountry, and and they are, grizzly bears, wolves, mountain lions, that sort of thing are fun to talk about and that sort of thing, but they're not that much fun when you have to have really close encounters, and especially if you're on edge or I'm on edge and they're on edge and that sort of thing, things get a little bit dicey in a hurry. So we're going to talk about some specifics about that sort of thing, but of course, storing your food, one of the major reasons an animal like that would be coming around your camp or you'd experience them at close distance would be that they see or smell your food. So we'll talk about it again, like I say, but a grizzly bear, for instance, if he gets a food reward, will visit that same site on the average. This is just some data from the Craigheads that have done some extensive grizzly bear type of experiments, but 17 times will they revisit a campsite if they are actually fed. So those are things that are hard to break once they get started. And so that's one of the reasons that we don't want to be the ones that cause that problem. We may get out of it with a minor experience and that sort of thing, but the next person and the next person and the next person on down the road may have the real difficulties that can be experienced with animals of this power and nature. So we really want to pay attention to our where we store our foods and actually the trash that we might have. So, and when I first started using the backcountry, my dad and I think most everybody used to just dig a big hole and they stick their trash in there rather than pack it out. But it's a big thing now with as many people as we have using the backcountry that we don't want that place to be trashed up, and we don't want wildlife to be experienced and getting a food reward from a campsite area. So we pack everything out, as most of you are aware of. That's probably more than anything at this point. But not too far back in our history, in my lifetime, did we just commonly just leave our trash there. We didn't just spread it out. But another big thing is pets, and we run into people taking their dogs. That's probably the primary one that we see. And we always had several camp dogs in all of our camps and camping experiences, but a well-trained one is very, 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 very important. With these big predators, a good, well-trained dog is worth their weight in gold, because they'll keep these predators away from your camp, or at least run them out and give them a bad experience while they're in camp, which I think is actually a good thing. So that the next time somebody comes in, maybe doesn't have a dog, the bear has a little bit of a history there and doesn't go through all your stuff. And they remember the last time where a dog was right on their butt and chased them for 2 or 3 miles. So dogs can be very important. I would not take the common house dog that doesn't have too much for protective instincts. We've had really good experience with many of the livestock dogs, your Australian Shepherds, Border Collies, your Blue Heelers, and things like that. You want to make sure that that dog is well trained, will listen to you in tense situations and that sort of thing, and they will get you out of a jam more than not. If you have a dog that runs back to you, if they have a bad experience, that's not kind of the dog that you want to take in those kind of situations. You want them out as your spear, pushing away from camp rather than bringing something, attracting them into camp. So that's about all I'll say about that. We could get into quite a diatribe on all of that as well. But the other parts of this is that, again, it kind of goes back to the first principle we talked about, is that there are sensitive times. And I'm not one, actually, to say that we ought to be leaving them completely alone, locking the gate, and avoiding these places, because I think this is the livestock, wildlife, and that sort of thing, and us. We've been here as long as the Creator put us here, and we've been interacting all of these times. But there are times, during the mating season, during nesting, when they're raising their young, and in the middle of the winter where we could put more stress on them than they deserve. And we want to be awfully careful. And I think most of us already have that in mind when we go out there to view them. I'm not, like I said, I come at this as a hunter, but I'm not really thinking about hunting when it's the middle of January or February and I spot a bull elk off on the hillside and want to take a little closer look. I just want to get in closer, take a good look, and leave him be and let him scratch out a living where he's at. So I wish you many hours of wonderful wildlife viewing. It's a great resource we have out there, and it's not just a huntable resource. There's a lot of what we call non-consumables about it. It enriches our lives to be able to see the wildlife out there on the hillside. So as you get in the backcountry, just take those things, keep them in mind, and you'll be fine. And so I thank you for your time, and we'll call it a day at that.